last week, if you were here, my dad preached. Wasn't that a great message last week? So good. He talked about the 4 Ds of college, which is, let me see if I remember, it was discovery, discipline, direction, and determination. Come on. You got me. You got me. And so, such a great message. We're going to throw it up on YouTube soon, so if you missed it, you can watch it. But I thought it was awesome to have him here, and he only gets to be here once, every semester, and I just think that's so fun to have him, and he loves what's going on. He was like, it's so fun. It was actually his idea, the card thing, so whoever won the Starbucks gift cards, that was his idea. You can thank him for that. But he just loves being here. He loves what God's doing here at the U, and it's just so fun to be able to have him here. But today we get to talk about our series Money Talks. Obviously, Nick does a funny video, and we get to watch that, and it's great. But God has a lot to say about money. And sometimes people get mad or frustrated when the church talks about money or when Christians talk about money. I think that's funny because the world talks about money so much, and we're okay hearing about money from every other source, from school, from rappers, from all these things. It's like, oh yeah, money, that's great. But then when the church talks about money, they're like, whoa, like we got to be quiet about money. We can't talk about money. But the Bible talks a lot about money, and one of the many, many, many verses about money is from Luke 16. We'll read it here. It'll be up on the screen. But it says, he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, we'll talk about what that means in a minute, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you Wait a minute. And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, what someone else's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And like I said, we're going to talk about mammon in a little bit, but really what mammon is it's the greed side of money. And a lot of times we have this desire to want more money, and it kind of is in us from a young age, and maybe you have a lot of money, maybe you don't have a lot of money, but we always want more. And it's like, as a kid, you're taught like a bunch of words, and the one you remember as a toddler is more. You're like, more, I want more. And like they learn the sign language, more. And they just want more. And that's how we are often. And I know an example for me of wanting more was when my parents would bring us to go like shopping. They'd bring us to the dollar store, and the dollar store is just this wonderful place where everything's $1. It's crazy, and just especially as a kid, you just see all these toys, and you don't know they're the cheap versions that are going to break in like 6 seconds. You just see the toy and the wrapping, and it looks amazing. And so my parents, when we were growing up, we'd go to the dollar store, and they'd give us each $2, and so we could get 2 things. It was a pretty good deal. So we'd be going and searching, but pretty quickly I had found my 2 things. And I had one other brother. And so I was one of those people where if I saw it, I would just grab it. I'm like, that's my thing. And then I'm like, oh, that's my thing too. That's my thing as well. Oh, these are all the things there are my things. Like, I need all this in my house. Like, everything you got in here, it's like you walk into, like, I don't know, your favorite store, with like Urban Outfitters, H&M, whatever. You're like, I need all that in my closet. Just put it in the bag and just charge my card, because I can do that. My credit limit's not that much. But we want things. And so I convinced my brother, my brother's super nice. He's a great older brother. I'm the younger brother, but he was a great older brother, really protected me, really loved me. But I kind of took advantage of that love a little bit, which is not a good thing to do. But I don't know. I was 4. It's like, what are you going to say? Like you just tell a story of when you were 4. It's like immediately forgiven. But it'd be funny if you told the story and you didn't say you were 4. You're like, the other day I did this, and then I was 4, guys. Yeah, I didn't just go up to somebody and punch him in the face. I was 4. So I'm at the dollar store with my brother, and I convince him, and I say, all right, his name is Connor. I say, Connor, I've already found 2 things, and we only have $2. But I see you haven't found anything yet. So what makes sense to me is if you just gave me one of your dollars, then I can get 3 things, and since you haven't even found anything yet, you can just find one, and it makes it easier for you. I'll just have it I get 3 things. So then all of a sudden we would go up to the counter, and my brother was like, okay, like, that's fine. Like, sure, I'm going to help my younger brother out. So we'd go up to the counter, and I'd have 3 things, so excited, and my brother would only have 1. And my parents are like, wait, Logan, why do you have 3 things? I'd say, because Connor gave me one of his dollars. And they're like, what? And Connor, it's okay. I'm happy with 1 thing. And he's like, so great. And I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. He's a sucker. Like, and my parents are like, no, Logan, put one of your things back. Connor, go pick out something else. He's like, no, it's really fine. Like, I only need 1. Logan can have 3. I'm like, yeah, see, he said it. He said it. Like, I can have 3 things. And my parents are like, no, you're missing the point. Like, you can't, like, spanking or something. My parents were good to me. It's all good. It's all good. I did get spankings, though. Whether that's politically correct nowadays, I got spankings. They hurt. I remember I always got spankings in the office on the leather couch, and it was like this dark room, and the blinds were always closed. And the blinds were probably always closed because it was like always ready for a spanking. So my parents taught me I couldn't steal $1 from my brother, although he was willing, and my flesh was weak. He was willing to give it up, but he was very nice, and I was not. And I think that's maybe how we are, even as we grow older. Maybe we don't swindle quite the way that I did in the dollar store, but I feel like oftentimes we are that way with a lot of aspects of our life, is we kind of try and figure out, well, they said, like, it's all good. Like, it's totally cool. Like, they said that if I say that little bit of a lie, like, it's totally cool because they got my back. Or, they said that they don't need that money and I don't need to pay them back, even though every time they, if I pay for a meal, I always make them pay me back. I'm like, oh, you're going to Venmo me? You're going to Venmo me? And you, like, set a calendar reminder on their phone. It, like, dings at, like, 6 a.m., like, pay me back. Like, and then all of a sudden you owe them money and they say, oh, no, it's good. You're like, oh, yeah, you're a great friend. Like, awesome. I got you next time. I got you. And then next time you're like, hey, where's that money? I need that money. I need that money. And I think sometimes we can get that way with our life, and especially in the way that we manage our money. And so when we talk about this idea of mammon, as I've said this word, you're like, what are you saying? Why are you saying? Is that even English? Probably not. But I think it's Greek, and then the Hebrews used it, but it's a word called mammon. And basically what mammon is this love for money. It's this it's really this greed of where you say, I have to have more, I have to have more, I have to have more. And what he's saying in this verse, he says, you can't serve God and mammon. Basically, he's saying, you can't love money this way. You can't have this desire that's all about you, that's all about greed. And there's so much that comes with that spirit. Oftentimes when teaching on mammon, a lot of pastors will talk about the spirit of mammon, because it's not just an action. It's actually a spirit that comes over you where it's about me, it's about my life, it's about greed, it's about what I can get, it's about all me. And it's so easy to get caught up in that. And I think it's easy to point out somebody who's selfish when you see it lived out. But I think a lot of the spirit of mammon is actually inside. And I think that maybe it's not easy to see. Maybe some people would look around, maybe they'd think that you're a super great giver. After all, we read in the story when the disciples are with Jesus and they see these guys bringing super great like heavy gifts, which basically would mean they'd set it in the offering bin and it would make a big loud noise and it would be a lot of money. And they're saying, Jesus, look at those people. They're bringing so much money. And Jesus is saying, that's not what's getting my attention, because they're hiding what's really in their heart. Is their heart's about greed. Their heart's about getting people to notice them. And it's that spirit that starts to shift it to say, oh, look, God, I'm giving so much. Look, God, I'm making this impact. Or, God, I know I may not be giving my finances, but look at how much time I've given to you. After all, I'm in a life group, and I'm going to, Monday night service, and sometimes I even help at Sundays in my church. And, God, I'm doing all this stuff. And, God, look at how generous I am to you. And I'm going to post on Instagram how busy I am. I've just been at church so much. I've just been so busy serving church. Man, those Go Kids are just tiring. I just serve so much, and the kids... Or, man, I just serving so much, and it's just hard. But it's that spirit. It's about us. And God's saying, I don't want you to have that spirit. And so God teaches people throughout the Bible. At the first, we see Abraham as the first story of it. But he teaches this principle of tithing. Maybe if you've grown up in church before, you've probably heard that word a ton. And if you've never been to church, maybe this is the first time you've heard. Because tithing was actually, it wasn't a church word. It was just a word that meant a tenth. But the church kind of, like, took it over because that's what God used. And so he said, tithe. It's just an easy way to say giving a tenth. Because if you say that over and over again, it's just like easier. Tithe. Tithe is giving a tenth. And so we first see that in Abraham, where Abraham brings a tenth to God. And we see this story, this theme throughout the Bible. And, we hear about tithing in church and what it is. And say, okay, we got to bring our tithes. We got to bring our tithes to the storehouse. And it's like, what does this even mean? Like, why do we have to do this? And then, like, what's the whole purpose behind it? And a big part of the purpose behind tithing is gratitude. Because God knows that money can rule our life. Money can rule the way that we live. And maybe in college you feel right now, you're like, money isn't really ruling my life. Money just dictates whether I can go out to eat or not after the service. Or money dictates whether or not I can fill my car up with gas, or whether or not I get a car, or whether or not I do this. Because after all, I'm paying all this money for school. But then I think sometimes we forget that phrase that we just said. I'm paying all this money for school. What you're valuing right now, which is a great thing to value, but it's in education. It's to say, hey, I'm going to value this. That's going to set me up, but it's a value in our life. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, we forget that actually how much we're paying, and we convince ourselves that we're actually not paying any of it. And we say, oh, God, well, I mean, yeah, but that's separate. That 80,000, 100,000, that graduate degree, that all this stuff, that doesn't exist, God, because I only make $10 an hour at my job. But yeah, but God, I know that that's 100,000. Or I know, and for many of you, that's a very real thing. And some of you get scholarships. Some of you are working hard. Some of you are doing it on loans. Everyone's paying for it differently. But I think sometimes we just put that at the back of our mind and say, that's for another day, God. But what God's saying to each and every one of us here in this room is, I'm not worried necessarily about the amount, but I am worried about what you're bearing behind you in your closet. Or you're bearing behind you in the giving, to say, hey, maybe I can only give a little, but I feel like sometimes we give a little out of a, God, I'm so poor. God, I don't have very much. This is all I can give. And I think sometimes we're missing the point, because actually the person that Jesus was most pleased with was the person who gave the fewest, the least, the smallest. God said, you know why I love the gift that she gave? Because her heart behind it. I love the gift that she gave because of the way that she brought her gift. And sometimes we think, God, how could you be pleased with this? How could you be pleased with this small amount? How could you be pleased with this? Because after all, I'm just a poor college student. Or maybe you feel guilty because maybe you had scholarships or your parents paid or whatever, which I think are huge blessings. And, some of you are in this place and you're that person. And, we're not going to have you raise your hand because the other people who didn't have that are going to be like, oh, man, that's not fair. But then you feel this guilt. And the other people who maybe couldn't afford it and they put it all on loans, then they feel maybe a little bit of guilt. And then there's some people that are caught in between, in the middle. And then we all feel ungrateful. And the people over here are ungrateful because you're like, wow, I feel like I didn't deserve it. And I feel like I got this gift and it's so great, but I just don't deserve it. And then the people in the middle are like, I don't really know where I fit. I'm not going to graduate debt free, but I'm also not in this mountain, so I really can't complain as much as them. And then the people over here are like, I'm not trying to complain. I just couldn't do it. But God, I can't really do anything now because I'm in this mountain of debt and I don't know where I'm going to go from here. And we all feel stuck. And God doesn't want us in any of those places. No matter what your financial situation, no matter how much debt you have or don't have, God doesn't want you there. God says, what I want is I want your heart. I want your heart to be in it, to say, God, I may only make this much. I may only be able to give this much. I may not be able to do this right now. But God, I want to give whatever the gift is that I'm giving you, God. I want to give it with joy. I want to give it with gratitude. I don't want to have a spirit that says it's all about me. I don't want to have a spirit that says, God, I can't do it. Because after all, when you're over here and you say, oh, I'm so ungrateful, that's actually about you. It's actually selfish. Because it's saying it's all about me, what I could do. If somebody gave you a great gift to pay for your education, then all of a sudden we're taking that gift and devaluing it by saying, oh man, it's just so I know it's a blessing, but it's just not as big of a blessing. And the person who gave it to us, or the scholarship that we got, or the gift that we were given, we're devaluing it. And God's saying, no, don't devalue it. You don't want to brag about it. Say, yeah, I graduated with no debt because I got scholarships. I was so much smarter. I was an athlete, or I was this. And then over here on the same side, we're devaluing God's call to say, God, I'm just in this thing. I'm in this mountain of it, and I just can't get out, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my degree, and it's just so hard. And I know there's many of us that are in the middle of it, but God's saying, why are you devaluing my call in your life? Why are you devaluing the place that I want you to go? Why are you devaluing that all of a sudden your life is over because you have loans, or your life is over because of this? And I think God teaches us many skills along the way that we can help pay it off, or we can help grow. I'm not saying that, we just put it behind us and say, no, it doesn't matter. That's not there. I'm going to pretend like it's not there. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I think sometimes we do that, and then we let the bitterness or the hurt or the fear take control. And that's the spirit of mammon, where we're afraid. And so when we talk about tithing, you say, okay, where does tithing really fit into that? Like, what am I supposed to do here? And when we talk about tithing, we talk about a 10%. We talk about why that is to overcome that spirit of mammon, is to overcome that fear, or overcome that ungratefulness and unbelief. And, it's a difficult thing because many people, we don't tithe. And, maybe you're in this room, maybe you haven't heard about it before. This isn't a conviction message to try and really make you feel that way, to give under compulsion. Because after all, the Bible says we don't want people to give under compulsion. We want them to give out of the overflow of their heart, out of that attitude to say, God, I want to honor you with this. After all, you've given me so much. And so about now in the American church, we see that about 12% of American families tithe, which, and this is Christian families. And so 12% of people who go to church regularly, they say that we tithe. But 83% of them believe that people should be tithing. So 12% do, and 83% believe people should. And so there's obviously a 71%, am I right? 71% discrepancy to say, hey, this is what I believe, but this is where I put it in action. And so a lot of us are caught in the middle of this spirit where we believe it's true, and I don't believe that's just for tithing and giving. I believe that's for a lot of things in our life. Do you believe that everyone should be reading their Bible every day? Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great thing to do. Well, how many of you do it? Oh. Do you believe that people should be nice, and maybe if they see somebody who's hurting, they should give their extra time or maybe help them out with something when they're in need? When you drive by somebody on the freeway and you see their car's broken down, do you think, hope somebody stops? Been there. It's snowy out. You see somebody's in a ditch and you go, I'm sure they got their phone. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure a tow truck's on the way. And I'm not saying we have to stop every time. I'm not saying, but it's this heart posture where it's, you know what, I believe it to be true. That's what we should do. But living it out is way harder, way more difficult. And a lot of the reasons that people struggle to give, they struggle to give back, which we believe in the tithe. And there's a lot of, debate on this. Okay, do we have to do it? And I think a big part of that is we're missing the point. We're missing the heart of what God's trying to get us. He's saying you're debating this issue that's throughout the Bible, and a lot of people who debate the issue, I think it's funny because we debate issues, just like I just talked about, we debate issues that we don't even do. We're like, yeah, I don't think we should do that. We don't even do it. It's like, yeah, man, like that guy who's working out over there, his squat form is so bad. It's like, well, what is the right squat form? Well, I don't know. But I know that squat form is bad. He's going to just hurt his back so bad. And you're like, how do you know that? Like, do you do a lot of squats? Well, I watched a video on squats once. And, man, when I did a squat once, and the form I did was my back hurt afterwards. And they look like they're doing what I'm doing. I haven't done a squat in 6 years, but they look like they're going to hurt themselves. True. But sometimes we do that. We say, I'm going to critique this, but I'm not going to be a part of it. I'm going to be on the back row. I'm going to say, yeah, that's not right, but I'm not even going to get involved and step in. And that's where God, I think what he's saying is he's saying, I want your heart. I want the posture. I want the attitude. That's why he says give cheerfully. Don't give out of compulsion. Don't give because somebody told you to do it. Don't give because of that. Give because you've seen what I've done in your life and you want to see more blessings. You want to see what God does with the obedience. And sometimes I think blessings, that this is where you have some people who are critical of this idea. Some people think blessings is an immediate financial or monetary gain. And people think, okay, so if I start tithing, start giving 10% to the church, then all of a sudden I'm going to receive blessings, which I translate to, I think in the Greek it says immediate financial gain. We say, that's what I think it means. And God says, no, I say blessings. But God also says that sometimes blessings are in hardships. So then all of a sudden we start giving and then we have hardships and we're like, all right, God, this is not adding up. because I thought I was going to get immediate financial gain. I thought that all of a sudden I was going to start tithing, and it was going to be like one of those stories that they share in church where all of a sudden the student loans are paid off. And it's like they knock on your dorm room, and they're like, you just started tithing, and the Lord got the tithe text from church. He saw that you texted UMN to 28950 at 8:42 p.m. And at 8:43 p.m., all of a sudden, a Christian billionaire from Dubai wants to pay off your debt, fly you out in his private jet. You get to skydive out of the private jet onto the Palm Atlantis, Dubai, have an all-inclusive trip, and then you get a photo with him, and he's going to fly you back, and it's going to be awesome. And we're like, God, that's what I'm waiting for. Blessings will follow. And God says, maybe it's not the blessings that you think. Maybe it's not about your desires. Maybe it's about the desires that I see. And so it's all funny, of course. It's funny because you guys are laughing, which the more you laugh, I feel like, I heard Michael Jr. say this. He's a comedian, and he came in, but he said the more you laugh, the more your heart begins to soften and open. And so just some people talk about like, man, you just tell jokes or you just say funny stuff to get a laugh. I think for me, the way I see God work sometimes when I'm smiling, even if something's going on, sometimes when I'm smiling, it just releases it and it starts to go away. And so I'd encourage you, this is like a separate thing, but maybe you're going through a hard time. It's like, just laugh a little bit. Just smile a little bit. Maybe spend time with people who lift you up. That's why people who are funny generally have a lot of people around them, because they lift people up. And so maybe God's given you a gift of joy, of funny. Use that. Don't think of it as something that like you're not pointing at yourself and saying, "Oh, I'm so funny." You're pointing to Jesus, because Jesus brings joy, Jesus brings laughter. And so that's just a thought on that. But in 1 Timothy 6:10, it says this about money. It says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows." A lot of times we say money is the root of all evil, but it's really the love of money is the root of all evil. And in that verse, talks about the craving, and I wrote down, we have two types of cravings. We have a debt craving, or we have a dough craving. And I'm not talking about like pizza dough, although that might be different. But we have a debt craving and we have a dough craving. And the debt craving, sometimes we feel like we have to keep up with everybody else. We feel like we have to spend, and it doesn't always mean debt. We may have the money, but we spend money that we know is allotted for something else. We have this craving and we have this desire where we say, I'm going to spend, I'm going to spend, I'm going to spend, I'm going to spend. And that's this love of money that's just, I got to have it. I got to keep up. I've got to do this. And it's only going to get harder in life to not keep up. Obviously, right now in school, it can sometimes be the excuse of, I'm a broke college student. But we spend and we spend and we spend to try and keep up with people. And then there's another side of it, the dough side of it, the money side, where sometimes, and maybe you'll get to this place, and maybe you're even in this place now, where we save and we save and we save and we save and we grip, and we just want our bank account to keep going up. We just want our money to keep going up. We want to have as much as we can. We want to be safe. We want to have so much. We can't have enough. We're not going to spend anything. We're not going to give anything. We're just going to hold it tight. And sometimes we love money in the spending way. Sometimes we love money in the saving way, but both ways are wrong. God says, I want you to love in a giving way. I want you to love where you say, you know what? God, I want to give. I'm not going to have this debt craving or this spending craving. I'm not going to have this saving craving where I'm just too focused on money, because it's the love of money. I just want to love it. I just want to think about it. I want to have so much of it. And God's saying, later in life, you're going to look back, and all the things, all the monetary things, all those things, they're going to fade. But what's not going to fade is the gifts that I've given you. What's not going to fade is the people that you've impacted. What's not going to fade is the church of Jesus. What's not going to fade is these things. And so I think a big part of tithing is actually very practical. It's, God, I'm going to align my life so that I can experience the goodness that you've created for me, so I can experience the goodness of what God wants to do through his church. I think tithing is way more about us than we realize. Way more about us. In 2 Corinthians 9:8, I'll close with this. It says, and God will generously provide all you need. Then you will always have everything you need plenty left over to share with others. God doesn't say you're going to have a yacht. God doesn't say your world is going to be so much different than it was growing up. You're going to be so much wealthier. But he says God's going to provide for every need. He says, but I want your heart. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And this week, it was actually the first time it's happened. We have a prison ministry. And we do ministry in prisons. We actually have a pastor who's on staff at River Valley whose job is to be in prison ministry. And he goes to several prisons all throughout the Midwest, not just here in Minnesota. This past week, we got the first tithe check from a prisoner, from an inmate. And it was, let's see, how much was it? It was $1.84, one that was $2. There was 4 tithe checks actually. $2, $1.84, and 2 for $1.50. And they also had to pay 49 cents to pay for the stamp to ship it. And they make 25 cents an hour in prison doing their jobs. And they have to pay the same price for things like shampoo and soap, same price as we do here, $4 or $5 a bottle. So maybe a week's wages to pay for shampoo or soap. And they said, God, I may be here in prison. I may be in a difficult position, but I'm going to honor you even from a difficult place. And we feel like sometimes our money, that's another thing that we say. We say, God, what difference is it really going to make? But God says, you're asking the wrong question, because you're asking what difference is it going to make in the world? God, what difference is this small amount going to make? He says, didn't you read the parable of the feeding of the 5,000? Where just a small amount was multiplied to feed the masses. Where just a small amount went farther than anyone thought it could ever go. But you're still asking the wrong question. You say, God, what difference is this going to make in them? He says, no, what difference is this going to make in you? It's a heart posture. It's an attitude. Say, God, I want to give. Not because somebody told me to do. Not because somebody said you have to. Not because somebody twisted my arm and threatened me to do it. But God, because I want to honor you because you've given me so much. You've given me this life. You've given me this place. You've given me this family. You've given me this church. I want to give this back to you because you've given me everything. So I want to honor you with this.